Hey there, this is your teacher, Mr. H, and you're watching History in a Hoodie! Today's episode is about the political geography of Asia, where we will learn all about where people live on the biggest continent. I can't wait to find out, so let's get the show started. What are we learning about today? The standard for today's lesson asks the students to locate on a world and regional political physical map the countries of China, India, Japan, North Korea, South Korea, and Vietnam. Before we start, let's go over some vocabulary for today's lesson. A subcontinent is a large, distinguishable part of a continent. A peninsula is a piece of land almost surrounded by water. An archipelago is a group of islands. Because Asia is such a huge continent with very diverse groups of people living on it, in geography we usually divide the continent into several smaller regions. This includes the Middle East, or Southwest Asia, which we studied earlier this year, Central Asia, or the former Soviet republics, which we studied in 6th grade, and Southern, Eastern, and Southeastern Asia. The final three of these combines together to make up our final unit this year. As always, when we start to look at a new regional map, it's best to learn the biggest countries first, and then learn which countries neighbor the big ones. Because this region is so huge, we often look at separate maps for both Southern and Eastern Asia. It is important to recognize that these two smaller regions join together onto a single map. On the Southern Asia regional map, the largest country by far is India. On its west side is Pakistan, and Pakistan borders the Middle East region with Afghanistan neighboring it. To India's north is China, Nepal, and the tiny kingdom of Bhutan. Bangladesh is surrounded by India on the east side, and the very eastern tip of India meets up with the Southeast Asia region. In the Indian Ocean, two island nations are found, the large teardrop-shaped Sri Lanka, and the cluster of tiny islands making up the Maldives. The East Asia regional map is dominated by China, of course. China borders the South Asia region, mainly India, on its southwest side. It also borders the Southeast Asia region on its south side. To China's north is Russia and Mongolia. The islands of Japan and Taiwan are just off China's eastern coast, and the tiny peninsula of North and South Korea are also found on the eastern side of China. The final subregion of Asia is the Southeast Asian Peninsula. This region is made up of, from west to east, Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. This region also includes the island archipelago chains of Indonesia, the Philippines, Malaysia, and the smaller countries of Brunei, Singapore, and Timor-Leste. So what? How does where you live affect how you live? Despite the fact that North Korea and South Korea are two separate countries, there is just one Korean people. People that live near together often share common cultural and historical similarities, despite the drawing of borders on a map. That being said, China and India are immediately separated by a border drawn on a map. And yet, their people and their cultures are extremely different. Why? Their border also happens to coincide with a rather massive physical barrier, the Himalayan mountains. A mountain chain that was nearly impossible to cross until the invention of airplanes. So, while the Chinese people, Korean people, and Vietnamese people may have had the ability to have a free-flowing spread of culture, ideas, and people across these natural borders, not so much with India and South Asia. Now what? What am I going to do with this information? While this unit lumps the countries, geographies, and histories of Southern and Eastern Asia together, it is very important to be sure that you don't as well. Just as Asia is too big of a continent to study all at once, Asian is too big of a group of people to connect as well. Literally half of the population of the world are Asian. That's 4.5 billion people. Look around in your classroom right now at the other students who have the same hair color as you do. Brown, black, blonde, and red. How would you feel right now if you were lumped together and treated all the same because of one of your physical features being similar? I imagine you would rather be recognized for your individuality, but if not, at least for your appropriate cultural group. Ignorant people who are too lazy to ask one respectful question often mess up the various ethnic groups of Asia within the continent, especially East Asia. Vietnamese people, Japanese people, Filipinos, and Koreans are not the same as Chinese. Even within China, there are a variety of ethnic groups like Han Chinese, Tibetans, and 53 others. If you would get offended if someone assumed the wrong culture group for you based on your appearance, make sure you are knowledgeable about other groups around the world yourself. Instead of assuming, why not ask respectfully and learn a little something about your acquaintances? If you're going to treat their culture with respect and curiosity, you will find that people are more open to share. Wow, so learning about the countries of Asia is really important for us to understand. I'm glad we learned it today. Are you ready for some review questions? Which country is marked by a 5 on the map? Which country is marked by an 8 on the map? Which country is marked by a 1 on the map? Which country is marked by a 3 on the map? I hope all of you learned a lot from today's episode of History in a Hoodie about the countries in Asia. If you did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Just kidding, I don't care about that stuff, but do make sure you study this lesson. Bye now.